Okay, so for a lot of us, there's this ultimate retirement dream, right? You live in your home for decades, you watch its value just skyrocket, and then you get to cash in on that huge nest egg completely tax-free. I mean, it sounds perfect. But what if I told you that your single biggest asset might also be your single biggest and most hidden risk? So, I was having coffee with a neighbor of mine not too long ago, and he laid out what he was convinced was a brilliant retirement strategy. You know the story. The kids are gone, he's an empty nester, and his house is now worth about $2.5 million. His plan? Simple. Sell the house, buy a smaller place for $1 million, and then use that leftover $1.5 million to fund his retirement.
All right, let's break this down for a second, because when you first hear it, his logic seems absolutely flawless. Think about it. When you pull money out of your RRSP, every dollar you take out is fully taxable. But when you sell your main home, your principal residence, that profit is completely tax-free. It really does seem like a way, way better deal.
And that, right there, is the question that changes everything. Because life, well, it's messy. A business deal can go south, an unexpected accident can lead to a lawsuit, all sorts of things can happen, they're totally out of our control, and could leave us in a really tough spot financially.
And this is the point where I kind of had to hit the pause button on my neighbor's little victory lap. Because there's a slight problem with his plan. Actually, scratch that, it's a huge problem. And it's a risk that almost nobody even has on their radar.
Here's where we get to the absolute heart of the matter. Your RSSPs? For the most part, they are protected from unsecured creditors. So that's people you owe money to, but there isn't a specific asset, like a car, tied to the loan. If there's a judgment against you, they generally can't come after your retirement savings. But the equity in your home? Oh, that is a completely different story. How vulnerable it is all comes down to provincial laws, and that, my friends, is where the trouble begins.
So you're probably wondering, how much protection are we really talking about? Well, you might want to brace yourself for this, because the reality of the numbers is, well, it's genuinely shocking. I had to tell my neighbor that for his $2.5 million home in Calgary, the amount that's legally protected from a judgment creditor is just $40,000. Seriously, let that sink in. Out of $2.5 million in equity, only $40,000 is safe. A creditor could potentially have a claim on all the rest.
And hey, this isn't just an Alberta problem. Just look at how this plays out across the country. Over in British Columbia, the protection is as low as $9,000 to $12,000. In Ontario, it's just a little over $10,000. And get this, if you're in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, or PEI, there's no exemption at all. Zero. Your entire home equity is just sitting there exposed.
So why on earth are these numbers so ridiculously low? Well, it all comes down to old laws. These protection amounts are set by provincial legislation, and the thing is, in most places, they just haven't been updated to keep up with decades of soaring house prices. They were never indexed to inflation, which has created this huge windfall for potential creditors.
You can see how this leaves homeowners with a really difficult dilemma. It really becomes this tricky balancing act between trying to save on taxes and trying to keep your assets safe.
And this is the fundamental trade-off, isn't it? On one side, you've got your RSSP. It's almost fully protected, but it's taxable when you pull the money out. On the other side, you have your home equity, completely tax-free when you sell, but almost totally unprotected from creditors. You're basically forced to choose between security and tax efficiency.
So as you can imagine, after I explained all of this, my neighbor's confidence in his quote-unquote perfect retirement plan just kind of evaporated. He was informed, for sure, but he was also looking pretty nervous about the whole thing. But I told him, hey, don't panic. Because the good news is, you're not powerless here. There are actually strategies you can use to protect that equity you've worked so hard to build up over the years.
Now, one really powerful tool for this is something called a trust. In simple terms, by putting your home into a properly structured trust, you're separating the legal ownership of the house from your other personal assets. This basically creates a shield, making it much harder for any future personal creditors to make a claim against the house. And this strategy can be especially great from a tax point of view once you turn 65, but it's super important to get professional advice to see if it's the right move for you.
So, armed with this new information, my neighbor's whole outlook just completely changed. He now had a real path forward to protect his retirement funds, and all of a sudden, he could hardly wait to turn 65 to put this new plan into action. And that brings us to the final thought I really want to leave you with today. Your home, it's probably the most valuable thing you own. You count on it. But is that asset, your biggest asset, truly as secure as you think it is? You know, it might be time to find out.